Jackson against Adams. Now I want you to think about this a little bit. What has Jackson so mad that he is yelling, corrupt bargain, corrupt bargain, corrupt bargain? What happened? Think about it.
He won the popular annual.
Well, he was mad about that. But he still said there's a corrupt, what would have had to happen for, in his mind, a corrupt bargain to happen? Okay. Well, that bothered him that Henry Clay supported John Quincy Adams. But what bothered him worse? Once Adams got elected, what did he do? Not vice, but he made him his Secretary of State. So Adams appointed Henry Clay as his Secretary of State. And Jackson went nuts. He was outraged and claimed this appointment of Clay as Secretary of State was a corrupt bargain between Clay and Adams. That he had promised him he would be Secretary of State if he threw his support behind him in the House, which is pretty common things. Would it not be kind of common to do that now? But in that day, Jackson didn't see it that way. He thought he was cheated. As Mason said, I won the popular vote. I won the electoral vote, and some rotten son of a gun like Henry Clay throws his support to somebody else so he can become Secretary of State. He was outraged. He called Clay the Judas of the West. That's what Jackson called Henry Clay, the Judas of the West. If you know your religion, you know who Judas was, right? Went against who? Jesus, yeah. So they called him the Judas of the West. And again, Jackson claimed that Clay had supported Adams in the election of 1824 in exchange for that top post in the cabinet. And he was incredibly bitter, as I mentioned, and Mason said it, because he actually won the election in his mind, both in the popular vote and the electoral vote. He was so mad that he resigned his seat in the Senate and began an all-out effort to do what? Win the presidency in 1828. He dedicated his life to putting out whatever effort he had to do to win the presidency in 1828. He was so damn mad at the party, he referred to himself as a what? Democratic Republican. While Adams was considered in his mind a national Republican. So what's we starting to form here? The Democratic Party. Okay? So Jackson was so enraged that he referred to himself the next 3 years as a Democratic Republican and referred to Adams as a national Republican. So what are you forming for the first time in history? The Democratic Party. Okay? So that was the results of Jackson versus Adams. So let's talk about that election of 1828, and I'll feel really good about you girls getting this information before you go. We've got just about enough time. So we're going to move on to the election of 1828. Who did the Republican Party nominate for re-election? Because they called themselves the Republicans still. Yeah, John Quincy Adams for re-election. They still considered themselves Republicans. Jackson referred to them as National Republicans. Who did the Democratic Republicans, or Democrats for short, nominate? Andrew Jackson. Now I'll tell you, these Republicans were brutal on Jackson. They publicly called his wife an adulteress. They called her a whore. They said that Jackson's mother was a prostitute. I mean, these guys were awful. They were awful. So during the campaign, Jackson's opponents were brutal in their assault of Jackson. Again, they called his wife an adulteress. They called his wife a whore. They called his mother a prostitute. And I mean, it was hard. Can you imagine the toll it would take on his wife, Rachel, if she's called those kind of names during an election? It went on just terrible. And Jackson almost thought about bagging it because he was so damn embarrassed and mad about it, but he decided not to. But he caught a huge break because just before this election, all white citizens received the right to vote. All white citizens that were male. Yeah. All white male citizens had the right to vote. Now, who makes up a majority of the nation's population at this time? common people. And so Jackson knew that these people would vote for him in this election. So when all white males had the right to vote and took the responsibility to vote, because they had a candidate that they believed in, Jackson won a sweeping victory over Adams. And who was stunned across the United States? What type of people? Wealthy, just stunned. So Jackson wins a sweeping victory over President Adams because of the vote of the common man, and the wealthy are absolutely stunned. Who serves as Jackson's vice president, ironically, Will? John C. Calhoun was re-elected the vice presidency. So he serves as vice president under John Quincy Adams, and he will serve as vice president under Andrew Jackson. Now, sadly, on December 22nd, 1828, December 22nd, 1828, and at this time in history, when is the new president inaugurated? Now it's January. March, okay? Well, unfortunately, on December 22nd, 1828, prior to his inauguration and after he and his wife put up this incredible barrage of negativism, Jackson's wife dies of a heart attack. On December 22nd, 1828, a few months before his inauguration, Jackson's wife Rachel dies of a heart attack. He was so grief-stricken and felt so guilty of what his wife had to go through because he ran for president, he considered not going to Washington and getting inaugurated. He considered forfeiting the presidency. He really did. He was so distraught over his wife's death and the fact that he felt bad that he had put her through that abuse by running for president. He considered strongly not even going to Washington to become president. Well, he was a vindictive old bastard. And he thought about it a while, and he in his mind was convinced that his political opponents killed his wife with their relentless assault on her character. And he was going to go be the president to do what? Handle him in they're going to handle him in his own way. So after considerable thought of not even going to be inaugurated and become president, he gets in his mind that his political opponents are responsible for his wife's death because of their relentless attack on her character, and vows he's going to go to Washington and stick it to him, baby, when he gets there. He's going to take out his frustrations, and he'll handle his opponents his own way when he becomes the most powerful man in government. Okay? Very good. Thank you, girls, for putting up a quick lecture. You guys are dismissed, and good luck tonight. I'm not sure what we're going to do yet, but I think we'll maybe do something different, and we'll talk about Jackson's inauguration on Monday, and we'll do something with this group here while you're gone. Okay, thank you, good luck, have a wonderful time, kick butt.
Thank you. Thank you.
There's no power in the Lady Panthers.
Did you see that? Oh.